Thank you, PJ. It is time for another edition of the Pair and a Spare podcast. We finally have football that we can actually discuss. The kids are in school. Chip's moving people all across the country. Burnsy is living his childless, footloose, and fancy-free life. I'm Justin Gaard from The Fan. We've got Chip Scoggins from the Star Tribune and Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com. We are presented, as always, by Jack's Cafe. Make your reservations at jaxcafe.com. Gave away some tickets for the opener. Also have some tickets to give away for Saturday's game against Rhode Island. So stay tuned for details on that. How's everybody doing, first of all? How did Labor Day weekend treat everybody? Besides you, Chip, having to move somebody to somewhere and basically do all the work for them is what I understand.
Yeah, it was so I got home from the game Thursday night around 1:30 in the morning. And then I was on the road at a little bit before 5 a.m. So I got about an hour sleep, went to Chicago, had a great time, moved my daughter. But hey, I've been shamed into upgrading my audio. Do I sound good for the listeners?
You sound fine to me. I think you sound good to Burnsy.
It's a life changer for, I think, a lot of our listeners, Chipper.
I got a couple tweaks in the last couple of weeks because we've since gone to not studio, right? We should explain this, why my audio was a little I guess, underwhelming for people.
We've been trying to make it more convenient for everybody and just get on YouTube, which is fun. We like being on YouTube. You should subscribe to the Pair and a Spare YouTube channel. All you young people out there or old people. I don't want to, discriminate. Anybody can subscribe. It's there for all of you. So we've been trying to mix it up a little bit. We're trying to change our best.
That's right.
Is essentially what we're trying to do.
And you being a radio guy, you have the professional setup. Obviously, Burnsy does a million podcasts, and so he has a professional setup. Me, I was just using whatever you call those things, your AirPods.
Yeah, your headphones, basically.
Yeah, and so it wasn't as high caliber as yours. So I took the advice, and I'm borrowing my wife's headset. But you guys, you didn't respond to my text.
Hold on. We're gonna get to it. Oh, people can see it because I have this, Chipper. I put this. This is the text we got last night from Chip Scoggins. Can everybody see this on YouTube? I'm blocking Burns' face. I don't know
Look at you being able to do graphics. Who are you becoming?
Well, I'm eliminating you. I'm kind of eliminating me. I'm coming over here.
A lot of people are enjoying eliminating me.
Yeah, I still don't know exactly, but this is the text we got from Chip last night. The September, you might want to fill it in. September has started, but there's the planner. I can't even believe it. I wept openly because I can't believe how organized you're going to be now.
Well, in my drive to Chicago, I was thinking about all the different things I have going on.
And projects that you have, maybe?
Projects and interviews and this podcast and just different things. I'm like, you know what? I'm not as nimble as I was mentally.
Wow.
10 years ago. So I went and paid Target a visit, found me a planner, and I feel like my life has changed. I've already started putting stuff down in it.
There you go. I'm telling you, it's the way to do it.
I've never felt unorganized or is it disorganized?
Disorganized, yeah.
But it's probably time. So you guys shame me into that. So I have a headset going and I have a planner. So
you are ready to go. It's unbelievable.
This is the first day of school, right?
It is, yeah. I feel like you need a chalkboard saying Chip Scoggins. I'm 50 some years old. I'm here at the Pair and a Spare. It was, and by the way, Burnsy, you'll appreciate this. He's so organized. He was in the studio before I was today. I logged onto the studio and there was Chip with his new headset because I'm sure you write down, be 15 minutes early or be 30 minutes early to all of your projects and appointments and things. So this is going to be good. This is going to be great. We won't have any episodes where you don't show up like we did in the spring. So that I think is going to be good. We'll just put this down, just write this in the calendar, moving forward until basically January. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Should we talk football or do you have any more you want to say, Burnsy?
I was just going to say, I forgot about the whole Chip forgot to come to the studio episode.
Yeah. Forgot. Just straight up
let's
forgot.
Not go there. Let's not
just
go
straight
there.
up forgot. You think that would have been enough to get a planner, but he still held out for months after that. But we're glad that you finally came around to Planner World. I spent an entire flight yesterday from New York, getting this week in my planner, getting some, a couple of weeks out. It's just a good thing. We got a lot going on, man. It's it's football season now. We've got a million things going, so it makes sense to keep it all organized, especially at our age. All right, let's talk football. I don't understand you two. I'm gonna be quite honest. I don't get you two. Because I went back and I listened to the Pair and a Spare podcast the last couple of weeks, And all I heard from both of you was openers are weird. Openers are aberrations. Burnsy, you always say openers basically tell no story about anything that happens the rest of the way. I'm generalizing, but I'm doing it to make my point. And then I read Chip on Friday morning, basically saying, this is the same thing we've seen for 50 years. I'm going to have to keep going with service academies. I'm going to use the same numbers, just go back to my old file, and I'm going to put all this in. And then Burnsy, I hear you on Gopher Gridiron Radio basically say, you all but physically assaulted Daniel House. That's how mad you were. You almost did the punch your pillow trick that we hear from, when you're mad, you got to punch a pillow. Don't punch somebody else. Do you need a pillow? Did you need a pillow at Huntington Bank Stadium on Thursday night because you were completely agitated? Hey, look, it was a bad way to start the season. It was a win. It was an imminently winnable game. I'm not going to be a fraud either. I talked about it for the whole month. This game has more significance than it probably should because of now what's coming. You've got Rhode Island and you've got Nevada before you get to Iowa, and you've got one opportunity against a Power 5, Power 4 team to just go win the game, get it done with, start 1-0 like every other team in the Big Ten did this weekend except Minnesota, and then ride out the next couple of weeks before you get to the Floyd of Rosedale game. So, of course, it was a bad way to start the season. It was a disappointing way to start the season. Especially the way that it ended with the Big Ten kicker of the year missing his second field goal of the year. But, I mean, I feel like you guys need to go podcast the last month of shows. It's one game. Let's just everybody chill. But go ahead. The floor is yours.
It is one game. I'll start here. And the kicker, missing two, he had a bad day. That happens. That's not something that will, that annoy me. But we had weeks, really months, of the head coach talking about the quarterback's going to be different, that the quarterback's this leader, that we got to be more explosive on offense. We've got to generate more points. And the first quarter of the season opener, they're 3rd and goal from the 10, and he runs the ball. How do you possibly explain to me that?
Well, that's definitely bothering everybody. I know that's the one. That's the one single play that is bothering everybody. But go ahead.
Because this is what we've seen for years. That's why I said this was a lot of the same old. That as much as you talk about, we're going to do things different, we're going to be explosive. I understand there's you got to get more points. There's no rationale that you can tell. I mean, I know PJ yesterday said he was possibly set, if he got half of it, he was going to go for it on 4th down. You cannot convince me he would have gone for it on 4th and 5 there. You cannot convince me he would have kicked the field goal. For all the talk about this change and evolving and doing these things different, the first opportunity you get in the season, you run it outside on 3rd and 10 from the 3rd and goal from the 10. For the life of me, I can't understand it.
I think it comes back to how many more times are fans or media going to point at the offensive coordinator for this stuff when we're now in year 8 of the same thing happening. That's kind of where my process has led me to this point, is stop blaming now Greg Harbaugh for what PJ Fleck takes over in the red zone and just takes the reins away and says, I want to get points. And that's where it even leads back to further. I texted you what Fleck said yesterday. The thing that bugged me most about that Monday press conference was, I don't know who advised him to say this, but I don't think they're doing him any favors. When Fleck comes out and says, before the game, I had this notion, I'm paraphrasing that part, but he said, in verbatim here, I thought it was first 1 to 20 wins. You can't go into a game like North Carolina and think that to me. You can go into Iowa because that's the way it goes. But you can't go into a game like North Carolina where there were ample opportunities to be aggressive. And if you were to, I'm going to go back to think of, if Dragan Kestis doesn't smoke the right upright, the game's 17-7 at halftime. And I think that game flips on its head because North Carolina is going to be the most inept passing offense that Minnesota faces all season. And if they were to have been forced to throw the football there, I think it would have been a lot different. But to your point, Chip, about the red zone stuff, I mean, they threw the ball on 1st down in both of the drives that they don't get touchdowns there. Elijah Spencer drops one. The other one, it's tipped at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, that could have been a touchdown. That
Yep.
should have been
Yeah.
the other one. The tip was almost a pick six, which I'm sure
Yeah.
absolutely frightened the head coach and everybody else. But go ahead, Burnsy.
And then second down, you run it both times. It's a negative play. And then I fully have succumbed to the fact that I don't care who the offensive coordinator is on that spot. 3rd and goal. It was 3rd and goal from the 10 on one, 3rd and goal from the 12 on the other. Flex just playing for the points. And that's where even at the end of the game on that final drive, he also said, he was talking about the ill-timed penalties in this game, which it felt like we can get to.
Yeah, that's the story for me. Go ahead.
Every single one. And there were too many of them for flex standards, but he mentioned that Tyler Cooper holding call where he's like, well, the field goal would have been different at the 18. So that also tells you he wasn't playing for the touchdown there. He was playing for points. And I would even say if Draken hits any of those field goals, you know what we're talking about today is Mac Brown's lack.
Yeah.
Chip
timeouts.
heard
I know.
me in the press box because now I'm in the pretty person row in the second row. Like I'm literally with about 75 seconds left. Minnesota's just draining clock, and I'm like, am I missing something? Mac Brown has all 3 timeouts, and he's just saying, yeah, you know what, our offense,
whatever. Yeah. Well, that's what he said. He was riding on the outcome of whatever happened on that kick, right? We're either going to win or we're going to lose on this kick.
Which is an interesting way to play it because, what was the Kirk Ferentz line? I kept trying to think of it, Guardsy, where it was he took all of his timeouts at the end of a Minnesota blowout at Huntington Bank.
He said we were going to take Floyd and leave the timeouts here.
Yeah.
Which was so gangster. It's still maybe the most gangster thing I've ever heard from a 65-year-old man in his 50th year of coaching.
He's keeping up with the times. He's talking to the youths.
Yeah, that was rough. It was a great line.
Yeah.
If your kicker
and you're right.
both kicks, you're at 23 points. And I understand the consternation about the whole offensive thing. But the point I've tried to make to other people is as much as the focal point is the offense for this game and just generally 17 points isn't enough to win the football game. I would argue defense and first of all, special teams was the reason they lost the game.
Yeah. Yep.
But the defense also missed 20 tackles, which is the most of any game in the Fleck era. It's tied with 2019 Purdue. They all stunk. They all were sloppy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can have a more disappointing opener for your fan base because of 3rd and 10 run, all the missed tackles. Their 3rd down defense last year was one of the worst in college football, and they give up 8 of 16 this time, 50%. These penalties that you take away a fumble recovery, you take away a shorter field goal. I mean, it felt like every penalty they had was a backbreaker. It was. You drop an interception that would have given them the ball at the 10-yard line or wherever he was.
Not a pick six. Yep.
If not a pick six. Obviously the missed field goals. I mean, it was as sloppy of game as I can remember a PJ Fleck team having across the board. And so that's why I understand why fans are frustrated. Like what was that? That there wasn't a whole lot redeeming to take from that game.
It was the opener, Chip. It was the opener. Yeah, openers are weird. Openers are strange.
You're allowed to. We saw 7. Not everybody was perfect, but you're allowed to play. A little more error-free than that.
So, who did you like in the opener? Who did you like in their opening weekend? Because I watched nothing. I watched all U.S. Open all the time.
USC looked really good.
Okay, obviously. One of the maybe top 5 traditional programs in the history of college football with a high-profile head coach and always recruits. Yeah. Okay, like I get it. Yeah. I get people
with a new quarterback.
Yeah, who's of course going to be really good, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Riley
just how
quarterback.
That's how it goes. I mean, were you moved by Nebraska versus UTEP? Were you moved by Northwestern against Miami of Ohio? Did Purdue against Indiana State do anything for you? Iowa against Illinois State? Like
didn't see him.
That's what I'm saying. Like I get it. I'm just trying to be the voice of reason because everybody's melting down, and obviously I'm annoyed too because it's like, first of all, just make the damn kicks, and then we can talk about all this stuff and move on. Tell me about the offense after the 3rd and 10, because I agree. And here's my problem with that. Number one, everything you just said, Chip, is totally true. Like, just show us it's going to be different right there.
Yeah.
But when I'm standing on the sidelines and I see Daniel Jackson walk by me over there, I'm thinking, I'm not Jeff Collins, the high-profile defensive coordinator for North Carolina. I'm not him.
Yeah.
But I'm probably thinking, that's their best wide receiver that's leaving. That's an all Big Ten wide receiver. it'd be really strange to throw the ball here. Now, maybe it's a chess move of a chess move that we're leaving D-Jack out but we're still going to throw it. But I'm watching him walk by me and go, well, that's odd.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to throw the ball here. So, and I think they did that a couple of different times where it's like, and I know he can't play every play, but in obvious passing situations, when you're taking your best wide receiver out of the game, I know what I was thinking. And so I get it. The third, that one, I get why people are mad about it. What do you think of the offense after in the second quarter and on? That's what I want to focus on here with both of you.
I thought Brosner was obviously nervous early. I mean, his second throw across the middle, that was, as soon as he threw that, you're like, that's a nervous quarterback. And understandably so. He was going to settle down. I was disappointed with the protection from the line. I thought he got way too much pressure. 5 sacks, and he had to scramble out a couple. I don't think they ever let him feel comfortable. I thought he looked his best when there was the most pressure and he had to march him down. He looked like he was total poise and locked in when it was 144 and you got to go down there and get points. He looked on the money there. I thought he had 2 or 3 passes where I thought the guy was open and he missed him. There was one coming and out coming to the Gopher sideline. He was wild on
the opening drive. He missed Christian Driver on the first drive of the third quarter, which was essentially their only drive of the third quarter.
I want to get to that too.
Yep. Was that the one he threw wide of Driver there? I think it was. Yep. So I thought he was off until that last drive, and then he looked like, okay, this is what we were expecting to see. I was disappointed there weren't more shots down the field. I think there was only one really that it drew the
well, how do we know?
Last drive.
Because he got sacked 5 times. That's what I'm. Yeah, like the execution. Like to me, what I'm fighting against right now is the idea, and I get it. I'm conceding the 3rd and 10. I'm conceding the 3rd and 10. What I'm fighting against is the instinct to say this is the exact same thing we've always seen all the time. Like they did dial up. They only had 55 plays because their defense could not get off the field. To me, the game was lost in the 3rd quarter when they come out, run like a 40-play drive that took off 8 minutes. The Gophers go 3 and out. They ran 4 plays in the 3rd quarter. Like I think they had points on half of their. Right, I should say they didn't have points. They had a decent drive on one of them. Yeah, they had 4 possessions in the second half.
Yeah.
And one of them was 3 plays. And so it's like, it's hard for me to say that it was just all looked the same when they finished the first half well, maybe his best throw of the night was the second down pass to Jackson on the second touchdown drive. Yeah. Then you don't get the ball back. It's like, so I'm fighting against, because they did drop back a lot for them, but five sacks is a lot of sacks. And that's where it's like, that's what they have. You got to figure that part out because who knows if they were dialing up something. And 2 of them you mentioned were the pass interference plays.
He had 5 sacks and he ducked out of a couple of them. So it could have been more. Yeah. I thought the line play was not nearly up to the standard that they need to be for a veteran group.
I agree with that.
They just were not good enough. And so, I mean, you had the back-to-back sacks where, I don't know if they count the second one a sack he scrambled, but there, and I can't remember what quarter it was, but the fact that they couldn't get off the field defensively disrupted anything they were trying to do offensively because he just didn't have enough plays. But I want to see more Brosmer now that he's settled in. I just felt like the first half of that game he was nervous, and I think he was probably nervous and anxious just because obviously first Division I on the big stage, but also I think his line made him nervous. It made him antsy back there because he was getting.
I agree.
He was getting heat.
They didn't help. Now, one of the things I'm also fighting back against, like Guardsy is the running. They're just going to run the football. They dropped back more than they ran the football on Thursday night. Now, you only ran 55 plays, and I think they dropped back 28 or 29 times, which means they ran it, a designed run 25, 26, 27 times. But they still tried to throw a little bit more. Now, to your points, the Minnesota moving company up front struggled. We've also seen that historically with Brian Callahan offensive lines going back to that fabled 2019 season where Curtis Dunlap and Daniel Faalele couldn't figure out what a stunt and a twist was and Tanner Morgan was constantly running around against Fresno State, South Dakota State, Georgia Southern, Purdue even. But I think the thing I want to see with this offense is, now Brosmer said as much afterwards, and I think Fleck has acknowledged it, and we'll see if Harbaugh does on Wednesday. Brosmer was clearly nervous. Now, you can say why he was nervous. I mean, he's playing in front of 50,000 fans on a Thursday night after he'd play in front of 1,500 for the last 3 years. And it felt like after that fumble, he finally was just like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go out there. I don't have time. I can't afford to be nervous at this point. And he slung the ball around a little bit.
Let me talk about that fumble or that stretch, because I wrote that down. It is some homework today. Can you tell I'm coming in hot today? I'm coming in hot with a planner, and I'm coming in hot with a planner and new technology like Chip. To why I don't think it's the same old. And that stretch that you're talking about right there, Burnsy, North Carolina's punter pins them down at the 2 by the student section, by the press box. Did you think they were going to drop back and pass on first down in the end zone?
Well, they certainly couldn't run the football.
Well, that's what I mean. And so I'm thinking, God, what are they going to do here? Old Gopher mind in me is going, okay, what are they going to do here? Because the line can't block anybody right now.
Yeah.
Brosmer's been running for his life. And he throws him out of jail, right? I think it was like an 11-yard pass. And then what happened the next play? They drop back again, and he fumbles. So it's like you have this positivity of, okay, I was stunned that they didn't at least just try to run it for like 2-3 yards to give him a little bit more room. They put him back there in the end zone. He delivers a nice pass. They pick up. I have it here. No, I don't have it. I have the next one.
I can look it up.
They threw back, and then the next play, he drops back to pass. Funny, there's pressure. He scrambles. It's turning into a nice run, and he fumbles the ball. Like there's your second short offensive possession of the third quarter. There's that there too. And here's the play where I really think it was different, where I said, this is going to be a test for me, was their last field goal drive, the drive where they went up 17-16. It was a 3rd and 4 at midfield. Now, what have we seen them do 3rd and 4?
I said this exact thing in the press box is if this was PJ Fleck of last season, it's 3rd and 4. He's taking over the headset and he's saying, yes, we're just going to run the football and try to get half of it to force me into a decision.
And he drops back to pass. Funny, is under pressure and scrambles for the first down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next play, 1st and 10, it was a pass.
Weird one.
Incomplete to Spencer. And then later, or I should say, I'm sorry, no.
That was the weird one.
You're right. Which, again, nice pass. Nice catch by Brockington.
Yeah.
And he fumbled it. And thankfully, Marcus Major was there for the Gophers to pick it up. But that's why I'm really fighting against that everything was the same. Like, I get the 3rd and 10. I understand all of it. I was frustrated too. But I think we have other evidence throughout the game that they do have more confidence in Max Brosmer, and they do have more confidence in whatever's out there. And now they got to execute it. Like, it clearly was not executed well.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you're playing Rhode Island on Thursday night as opposed to North Carolina, do you have more time? Like, it's a game, whatever you think of North Carolina, it's a better team than you're accustomed to for an opener. Your mistakes are going to be more magnified.
I am excited to now, for the next 3 openers, not watch a Power 4 team. Like, I watched Iowa beat up on Illinois State. I watched Wisconsin finally figure it out against Western Michigan, which, by the way, I think Western Michigan led at a point in the 4th quarter there. It got a little hairy on Friday night. But the next 3 openers, Buffalo, let's see. I think it's San Jose State and Eastern Illinois.
Well, be careful. We might have 30 Big Ten teams in the next 2 years, so it might be a full 12-game Big Ten schedule. But your point remains.
Start out with somebody who's got inferior athletes, especially as you're just trying to figure it out. I mean, we've seen Ohio State openers, North Carolina openers, Nebraska openers. It's great and all, but I'm excited to see them work out the kinks in a type of game where you can work out the type of kinks like Wisconsin had to in their first game and not have to pay the price for it.
If I'm a coach, I'd rather do that, but I know PJ's trying to tell us how great North Carolina is. They're not.
Did you see the rest of the ACC? I'm not here to tell you North Carolina is going to be a college football playoff team. Did you see how the rest of the ACC has looked so far?
Yeah, that's speaking to the team that a lot of us, myself included, put in the college football playoffs that has maybe the worst quarterback play going on right now.
Florida State.
Yeah, you got the wrong quarterback there. So, no, Guardsy, to your point, clearly we saw some things different in terms of being more willing to throw the ball in situations where we've seen them pass the ball more. But at the end of the day, how many points they scored? 17. They ran on when at the moment of truth, you didn't. And again, we don't know
at one of
where
the
they were.
moments of truth, at the first moment of truth in the first quarter, as the game
Yes.
went along, they were throwing it more, or they were attempting to do it more. They
Correct.
just they didn't do it, but that's what. But now we have to stay with that. Like, what I don't want this week is what we
Darius
talked about
Taylor.
last week.
Yeah.
We don't need 2 running backs making 60 carries. Like, just, you have to continue to nurture, because I do think there was some good from Brosmer at the end. Actually, throughout the night, there was good. But they got to figure out the pass protection, and they got to figure out, obviously he had a couple of drops in there, and just to let him get more comfortable. He put 430 yards up on the team they're about to play, right? I believe that was the number.
He threw 60 times in this game last year.
No, I'm not anticipating that, but I'd take half of it, just because I think this offense with this quarterback, like, you do need to. I'm all on board with continuing to nurture that thing. I want to make it clear that I think we've already seen more willingness than we did a year ago in throwing the ball.
I thought he finally settled in on the you may have mentioned it, the one he threaded between 2 guys there along the North Carolina side. Was that the Spencer?
The Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Burns
for 29.
Yes.
Is either 19 or 20 yards. I don't know.
It's again, I think the fumble literally hit him with, I have to stop being nervous. I can't afford to be nervous anymore, because
this was before the fumble, though. This was before halftime.
This was right before halftime. Yeah, and that's
their second touchdown drive.
Because I started right at halftime. Yeah, I started right at halftime that he finally settled in that drive. He had that throw, like, that was a big time throw, right?
Yes.
Right in between 2 guys.
2nd and 6 at midfield.
Yeah, and then they go down and score. And so I was thinking, okay, to your original point on this podcast, where I felt like they got the first game nerves out at that point. But then they come out second half, and the defense can't get off the field. The offense doesn't do anything because they don't have any, they don't have the ball. And more miscues start to pile up. You have the fumble, you have the penalties, and But I think there's something there that they saw on the. I mean, you're obviously not going to play hurry up the whole time, but I think they found something. Like, I think Brosmer got some confidence probably from that, and leading the offense down there, and having to throw, like you said, out of the end zone. He's in the end zone, having to make a pass. I mean, all those things are key markers.
Yep.
But it's the head coach can't go to a game and say, okay, 20 points, that's all we need, we're going to win this game. I mean,
I agree with that, especially game 1 when you don't know your team and you don't know theirs. Like,
exactly.
why would you try to predetermine?
It bugs me so much.
Yeah,
that was a bad North Carolina, so bad defense last year. They fired the coordinator and brought in a new guy. Now, you may have all the respect in the world for this coordinator, but it's still a lot of the same personnel. And so to predetermine that's how this game is going to be played out. I agree with Burnsy. Iowa, you think, okay, but to your point, Guard, you say all the time, Gopher coaches get in their heads about how games are going to be played out, and they
get spun up.
They let that affect. They let it affect everything. So, yeah, I mean, is it same old? That might have been, me, but it felt like same old when I watched that first thing. Where like, oh my gosh, what has changed here? What has changed after all these months of talk about change?
It's to your point. I think the way I'm interpreting it, at least, it's not the same old offense, because I don't think it is. I think it's the same old PJ philosophy of, in games like this, you're playing to not lose and not playing to win. And that's where you could argue some of the best games in his tenure, say Penn State and Auburn, when you're playing as a quote unquote underdog and you have nothing to lose, that's when this thing gets going. And that's when he coaches aggressively. And that's where, and essentially every opportunity he had to do so, in those red zone trips, or even the way he spoke about it on Monday, just playing for the field goal and not playing to potentially get in the end zone to really put a dagger on this thing. I'm getting tired of it, man. In a game like this, where you're already predetermining first 1 to 20 wins. I already had that in my mind going into the game.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Burnsy.
Yeah, and he said immediately after game, like on that call, that you could take a sack. Okay, well then you kick it from the 15 instead of the 10. I mean, that logic. And then he said yesterday that they were trying. Am I explaining right? Because I wasn't there, but I read your quotes, Burnsy, that he was trying to get half of it, and then possibly you go for a 4th down.
He says that, but it's like, you just ran a negative run play on 2nd down. You're not going to get half of it back on 3rd down. But I say that with peace and love. You're not going to.
Yeah.
So he can say what he wants there. It's just. But I mean, we've spent a half hour on the offense. Like, defensively, boys, they have an opportunity to get off the field at any point.
Yeah.
Against the most one-dimensional offense they're going to face all season, and they missed 20 tackles, including the linebackers missed double digits, or the drop pick six. You force a fumble deep in their end, and you get caught with a holding. You have another fumble that you force on a third down. You have two guys right there, and you don't make a play. I mean, for whatever you think of the North Carolina quarterbacks, and I don't know if you guys have seen, Max Johnson is probably going to remain here for another week at least.
Yeah.
From the quotes I saw yesterday, he's going to have a second surgery on that leg, which
wow.
prayers up to Brad Johnson's kid there. But the defense bugged me just as much because they had 3 huge opportunities there.
It bugged me more. The defense bugged me more because of the inability to get off the field, the penalties, the timely penalties, the untimely penalties that ended up like doubly hurting them multiple times. That, to me, if I'm ranking the reasons why Thursday were disappointing, the defense there, to me, especially if you want to minimize it to the first drive of the third quarter. Forget about all the other plays and all the other, not being able to fall on the fumble when there's 2 guys right around there that could have, also changed it. To not be able to allow North Carolina to really get themselves back in, because the Gophers at that point were up a touchdown, feeling, I think, pretty good about themselves. The offense had started to go a little bit after the Justin Wally interception, where they gave him a really easy touchdown drive.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, set the tone for how the rest of the game was going to be played and the pressure it was going to put on everybody involved with the Gophers, and they just could not get themselves off the field.
Yeah, I said this last week when anticipating, we were talking about new look offense, but because I went back and looked at the numbers and I had forgotten how poor they were on third down last year.
Worst
after being
third down defense in the Big Ten last year.
Yeah, after being top 5 nationally the year before in 2022, they were bottom 10, bottom 5 last year, and at like 48%. I remember telling you guys, saying, I was like, you're not going to win many games if you're giving up 48% on third down. And they were 50%. It's like, that is not a young, inexperienced front 7 either. I mean, they have a lot of veteran guys who play a lot of, meaningful games for them. I expected more. I mean, you saw some things where they got some pressure, but to what you said, Burnsy, after Max Johnson went out, even, I hate that he had such a serious injury, but I don't think he's a spectacular passer by any measure.
He's trying to give the ball away constantly through the air.
But even when he went out, you knew they had no passing game. They had no threat of a passing game, and you still couldn't get off the field. That had to be. So if you take the missed tackles and the penalties, again, that's just not up to the standard. It's not.
Even you look at that touchdown drive. It's the first one of the third quarter, I believe, where the underrated play of that game is the third down pass that Max Johnson threw the best ball of the night. Wally's in tight coverage on the North Carolina sidelines, threads it in.
Yep.
If you can get a 3 and out there and you're up 14-7, I think that game flips, but then you extend the drive, or even their touchdown drive in the first half. Devin Eastern gets hit with a personal foul on 2nd and 8, where the end of the result of the play would have been 3rd and 8. North Carolina was god-awful in 3rd and long. You know where they were really good? 3rd and short to 3rd and medium, because that's where they lived all night, because Minnesota wasn't very good on 1st and 2nd down. Now, that might be the best tailback they face, or one of them certainly, Omarion Hampton, who I think by himself forced 17 missed tackles.
Wow.
Now, some of that's Omarion Hampton is really good. He was the runner-up for the ACC Offensive Player of the Year in the preseason. Also, Minnesota's linebackers and safeties missed too many tackles that could have put them behind the sticks. I even think about that final possession where North Carolina got points. Omarion Hampton is one-on-one with the safety in the hole. Safety in the hole misses. Instead of a tackle for loss at the line, 13 yards. Or on that weird pass play, you have the safety then come down, takes too tight of an angle, misses the quarterback, which puts Justin Wally in space. He has to trigger on the football, which leaves the guy behind him right there. If you just make your tackles. And that's one of the things I'm going to be keeping an eye on as we go forward, Chip, because why were they so good on 3rd down in seasons like 2021, 2022? They were one of the best tackling teams in America.
Right.
And then last year, it really fell off. And now this year, you just missed the most amount of tackles you've arguably had in a PJ Fleck-led game.
Well, and I think we always said with those Joe Rossi, when his defense is really good, they do two things. They're in the right place for the most part, and they make the play when they're there.
Yep.
And last year we saw guys out of position all the time, confusion. That was the other thing. First defensive possession of the game, PJ has to take a timeout because they're confusion over, what personnel pack.
Defensive end substitution
again,
issue.
That might go back to first game, just the chaos of the first game. But when you pile it on top of everything else, I think that's where the frustration comes in. It's just like so many things where it just, and we'll get to special teams, but 2 illegal formation penalties on a punt.
Ridiculous.
Like, how does that happen, guys? I mean,
right.
With a 40-year veteran college football / NFL special teams coordinator, ain't that the question of the day?
So, I mean, I think that's where
it was just so sloppy. We've seen them lose in so many different ways in the Fleck era.
Yeah.
Sloppiness is not a way that we have seen a PJ Fleck coach team lose a football game at all. And if so, I can maybe think of one other time. And that's what has me a little bit worried. Now, again, to Gaardsy's point that he said 34 minutes ago when we opened the podcast, I have to take a little swig of my own medicine. Week 1 is a weird week.
Yeah.
And so many different things happen. But yes, we'll have to see in these next 2 hopeful blowouts. Can they at least clean up on the sloppiness to get ready for Iowa?
Yeah, because the Big Ten, I mean, as we've seen, there's some good teams. You got to get and if I know that you like your team. I think there's reasons to like the team, but there's things that you definitely have to get ironed out here. And that's what you write all this stuff down. You go, okay, first game penalties, ridiculous. Obviously the turnover, critical, decision making. What bugged me was it the last drive where they had guys running all over. They probably wasted 10 seconds or so getting guys in the right formation to run one of the plays. Like, that's the stuff where you go, if that continues, then it's like, that surprises me. Like you said, Burnsy, and I've said this forever, even the year 5 and 7, when the PJ's first year, the Demery Croft, Connor Rhoda era, like, they weren't very good. It wasn't they didn't lose because they were unorganized or they had a bunch of pre-snap penalties or they were doing illegal formations, or it wasn't because of that. They just weren't very good. And that's the stuff where, like, even that last drive, which was so good, it's like you wasted, I don't know how many seconds. I could go back and count, at least 10 seconds getting guys in the right position and running them across the formation and know you have to settle here. Like that, those are the little things that hurt you. And who knows, you might have been able to, the way Brosmer was playing, you might have gotten down to the 5 on that last drive, the way that they seem to have some things clicking. So that's the stuff that it can't continue now. Like you have to show improvement through that, because that was so surprising. We just usually don't see that, which is a compliment in a way, but it's also like, why is this happening now in year 8? You just had a full training camp. Like, let's figure that thing out.
Yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say that game felt, in some ways it wasn't out of character, but some of the stuff that we saw was a lot out of character, that it just felt sort of chaotic. And I don't remember thinking that about some of the losses we've seen. Has been, okay, the play calling or game management or just haven't been good enough or whatever, but that had like a new level of chaos that I haven't seen. It's just some of the type of penalties that we're just like, man, what is going on down there on the field? So that was the concerning part. And I think when you look back at it, to your original point, it's like, yes, this is not, a caliber opponent that they're going to play the next 2 weeks, but that was an imminently winnable game and beatable opponent.
And it was right there for you.
50% outcome in terms of how well you normally play. Just 50%. You win that game by 7-10. And if you play well, you blow them out.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They had like a 10%, 20% outcome, and that's the way it goes.
All right, well, let's pause here, and we'll maybe come back and talk a little bit of Gophers. We'll also spin around the Big Ten as well, but we want to talk about our friends at Jack's Cafe. There's nothing chaotic about Jack's Cafe. There's nothing sloppy about Jack's Cafe. Everything is always up to the standard that's been set for nearly 100 years in Minneapolis, generation after generation after generation, one of our favorite places to eat. They take care of us. They take care of you, the Parent of Spare listener, with more giveaways coming up this week. Pay attention to our social media channels to find out how you can enter to win a pair of outstanding lower-level seats and parking thanks to Jack's Cafe for the game against Rhode Island. But you can tell anybody, Chip, what to expect. You can predetermine. You can predetermine and say, this is the meal you should get. This is the food you should get. This is the table you should want. This is the vibe you should want. And no matter what you say, whether it's in the bar, in the dining room, in the patio, in one of the banquet rooms, and we've been to all of them, you know exactly what you're going to get, and it's going to be first class every step of the way at Jack's.
Yeah, when I say same old about Jack's, that's a good thing. That's a positive, right? Because you know what you're going to get. You know it's going to be great. I don't care if you go a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, it's going to be a top-notch experience. And there's nobody better in terms of giving you a first-class experience than Jack's, and just all the servers there, management, everybody there is top of the notch, top of the line. And I like the routine. I like knowing when you step in there, you're going to have a wonderful experience.
Right. If you went 30 years ago, you're probably going to feel nostalgic. If you were an undergrad and you had a sorority or, fraternity formal, and you took that lucky lady or man in your life to Jack's Cafe in 1982, you're going to walk in and go, this feels right. This feels good. And unlike Burnsy next to Daniel House in the second row of Huntington Bank Stadium's press box, you're not going to be mad. You're not going to be wanting to punch a pillow. You're going to feel very calm and very serene, Burnsy, especially if you're sitting out on that patio.
It's brunch season, boys. It's going to be in the 60s this weekend for highs. It sounds like to me some people ought to get out to Northeast Minneapolis, make your reservation, go have one of the best brunches around, or if you want to go at night, date night, anniversary, go have a drink at the bar and watch the football games this weekend. Yep. Make your reservations today at jaxcafe.com.
jaxcafe.com. Anything else Gopher-wise we need to clean up here, guys?
Special teams was the reason.
Special teams.
Like, we spent 40 minutes talking about offense and defense.
Leading question.
With the utmost peace and love to the most outgoing person I probably have ever met in Dragan Kesich. Great kid. Had the worst day of his life. Like one of the worst
career.
days.
I'm not going to presuppose that was the worst day of his life. I don't know. I don't know his story. I haven't walked a mile in his left-footed shoes.
Yep. But I mean, the Big Ten kicker of the year comes out, smokes the upright, and then they move it to the right hash, which I know there's a lot of fan consternation about. Well, look, I don't play golf. I don't know what a draw versus a push versus what all that.
Yeah, I assume they put it where he wanted it.
Yes.
That's
why is the assumption that that's one of the weird parts of it. Like, we have talked a lot of PJ Fleck here. You don't think they asked him before that play what hash you wanted on?
Right.
Yeah, I understand he missed it earlier, but you're going to trust, hashtag trust the process.
Yep.
And you're going to ask your all Big Ten kicker, which side you want it on? And he just hooked it. Look, I don't know what the correct term is, and it sucks for him. But if he just makes one of those kicks, of them, it's a much different story.
The consternation. Why do you think that consternation is? Like, there's no doubt in my mind they asked him, where do you want the ball?
Right.
But there is an assumption because of PJ's game management that they didn't do that. That's why.
Well, that's stupid. No, that's stupid.
You know what though?
They're asking a guy who's so controlling that he won't let a quarterback throw on 3rd and 10, or so controlling that he won't let his punter run a ball back, that PJ's just sitting down there thinking about going to Jack's Cafe after the game. Of course, that's so stupid. If people are thinking that, then they just want to just hate on the guy. It's not an assumption. Well, that's dumb.
I'm a Garzi.
I'm not saying I believed. I'm just telling you I guarantee you that's what the assumption is.
I understand that, and we have spent a lot of time lamenting the head coach here. That's not. But
there's no way.
I know about.
There's no way he didn't ask Dragan where you want the ball. I mean,
I bet he didn't even have to ask. I bet they already know. I mean, those guys.
Well, they know
people in. I mean, they know exactly how far they feel in warmups. A lot of times they know, and they'll go back out there. That's a constant throughout the game process. And by the way, that doesn't make PJ Fleck Vince Lombardi. That makes
every football coach does.
That's what they all do. So to suggest that, well, man, I wonder what was he playing? Fortnite or something down there? Everybody knows. It was pretty obvious where they were trying to put it. Yeah. I'd be stunned if we were wrong about that.
Yeah. It's a checklist thing for coaches. I mean, they all do pregame all that. So, you know what? As clutch as that kicker's been, I it's hard for me to rip on a guy who he had a bad day. I mean, it
Right.
happens. Unfortunately, it came at a bad time in a situation.
And anybody in Minnesota, we already have kicker baggage that's not even Gopher related. That's Vikings related.
Well, 27
including
yards,
at that stadium.
even at that stadium related.
I gotta be honest with you. The procedural penalties on the punting was more annoying to me than I missed.
Agree.
Bob Ligashevsky, what's going on, man? Like that's inexcusable. Once it's inexcusable. Like twice it's absurd. Like it absolutely absurd. So much of within this is, the advanced analytics. Okay, the expected points added in special teams.
This hurts.
North Carolina was like plus 4.8. Minnesota was minus 4.8.
That hurts.
A 10-point swing on a total of 25 plays between the two teams, special teams wise, is absolutely gargantuan. Yeah, just gargantuan. And again, if you've listened to this podcast or read anything I've written for such a long time, I hope this isn't the start of yet another year with this special teams, or even you allowed a 20-yard punt return on top of an illegal procedure penalty or illegal formation. Yet your return game is, we didn't even talk about North Carolina has to punt from their own end zone. Quentin Redding is lined up 60 yards from where it was.
That's a problem.
Fair catches the punt, it's at the North Carolina 42. Instead, it rolls an additional 18 yards, which for a man who tries to play trestle ball, field position is everything. Yet for yet another season, here we are hemorrhaging field position.
First game, Burnsy. First game. I would anticipate. I'm hopeful that they figure out something else return wise, because I'm looking at, and I know Redding had the one return at Illinois, I think the COVID year, or maybe the year after, that was a great return coming out of the second half. But it's like, is that what we got?
Garzi.
Yeah,
like nothing.
Well, and even with Jordan Newman, like a nice play in the first quarter there to extend the drive on a little swing pass where he made a guy miss and he goes. But thinking, man, it'd be hard for me to not go with the Scoggins plan of Coy Parrish day one. Yeah,
he was out there on special teams. He was blocking.
You
have him out there blocking.
Yeah.
Again, same old. We talked about they got to get more explosive. They got to be more dynamic in the kick game. Do you see any evidence of that?
No.
To me, again, honestly, and I don't pretend to be elite special teams mind guy, that looked like return-wise a lot of the same schemes we saw the last few years, which if you want to really be deep into the weeds these next 2 weeks, you want to have something to watch for against Rhode Island and Nevada, where hopefully it's a 3-4 touchdown win. Watch to see if they try to set up these returns any differently than they have in the past. And if that is not the case, maybe all my ill will towards a certain special teams coordinator of yesteryear wasn't the case. But that would be where, if that is the case, how are you not letting Bob Ligashevsky, who has been coaching special teams longer than I have been alive, just as long as Gaardzy has been alive, let him implement what he has done so well for so many years? You don't coach special teams for 40 years at the collegiate and professional level without doing something right. So I want to see if they try to do anything different here in these next couple of weeks, because I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's been since 2017 since they had a kick return touchdown, whereas Rodney Smith against Nebraska. Last one, punt return-wise, was Demetrius Douglas at Camp Randall.
That was an important one.
It is 2024 now. You have to try and get more dynamic, and I heard PJ Fleck talk about that to me at Big Ten Media Days. We got to get more explosive in special teams. I hear what you say. I trust what you do. Let's see if he actually tries to do it.
It looked like on the Redding non-fair catch, I'm almost positive they were trying to block that one. It got close. There was one guy that was close. Ligashevsky blocked a punt last year against North Carolina when he was special teams coordinator at Syracuse. One of the players got close. I'm not excusing why Redding was a million yards behind. That was absurd. But I do think they are trying some different stuff. But the return stuff it just seems like a white flag so much. It just seems like a white flag, like we're just going to play it safe. And I feel like they have more guys that can do different things in that regard. And let's not just be cautious about it.
Driver, Christian Hoskins. You got some dynamic players that don't have big roles that you can afford if they take a big hit, that it's not going to severely cripple your offense or defense. You'd think that there would be more. But again, I think it comes back to what you said. It's like almost waving a white flag with how conservative it is. And we've spent how many years of this podcast already since the birth of it, the conservative nature of the head coach. And that's obviously continues to go over to special teams.
Anything else Big Ten wise? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I know Coy and those guys have to earn the coach's trust, and they're still new, but at some point you have to look at the ceiling of a guy, and you look at what we saw from Coy Parrots on film and just watch him in practice. I mean, the guy is explosive. Give him a shot in these next 2 games to see if he can break something loose with their return game and then go from there. But this playing it safe is not. I mean, where's it getting you? It's the same old stuff. So,
in our final 4 or 5 minutes, anything Big Ten related you want to review or preview? I know the Cyhawk game's coming up here. That's an important one. But anything that caught your eye over the weekend, I can let you know about how great the Americans are playing at the U.S. Open. I was there in New York. I can let you know how great Hamilton is. It's a new play called Hamilton. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but we checked it out. It seems like it has a chance. Hamilton seems like it has a chance to be successful. Put that one on your list. As a guy who finally got to see it 8 years later, might be the last person in America to actually see Hamilton. But anything you guys want to talk about?
Well, you got Oregon and Michigan at home to start the season really struggling, where Oregon faces one of your favorite teams in the Idaho Vandals. And it's a 3-point game for most of that fourth quarter. It was getting pretty hairy. Plus you have Michigan needing a late pick 6 against Fresno State to really put that game away. I think so much of it is a lot of these elite teams, and that's where Florida State is being severely humbled because they chose the wrong quarterback amongst some other things. But, I mean, USC, I know it's the most recent game that we have seen for a Big Ten team, but that looks like a team that bulked up, and it looks like that change in defensive coordinator and the additions they also made to that. So they took UCLA's defensive coordinator. They also added someone like Matt Entz from North Dakota State to coach their linebackers.
Yeah.
They were making tackles they haven't made in quite a long time. And oh, by the way, now you get to face them in like 4 or 5 weeks, but they got some creatures on that side of the ball. If they continue to play with that amount of physicality in combination with their athletes, I mean, this is a team that's going to have a chance to make some noise.
Yeah, I saw that game. I was obviously traveling stuff, so I didn't get to see a lot Saturday. But I watched USC. Obviously, all eyes were on the guy who's going to replace Caleb Williams, and their offense is still going to put up a lot of points. Their receivers are really good, but the biggest change for them is defensively. I mean, they looked legit.
Again, we'll see. It's week 1.
We'll see. Yeah,
we'll see. Like now they might.
It's overreaction. Yeah,
LSU might suck. Who knows?
Yeah,
I mean LSU. Who knows?
I mean,
but you're right. That's their biggest question mark.
College, NFL, whatever, and we all overreact to one game, but they looked legit. They looked, especially defensively, and that's always been the thing that people looked at. They were just not good. So. I didn't see it, but it sounds like Penn State looked really good offensively.
I did see some of that. Yeah, they looked okay.
So, yeah, I mean, 17 teams won, and
it's amazing. It is. There are some times
17-1, baby.
There are some times where you just shake your head and go, "Of course." It'll be almost impossible. Literally, almost impossible. For anyone to ever hold sole possession of last place in the Big Ten. Of an 18-team league. It's like, man, I think the Porter rivals are having some fun with that one. I think from what I've known, that's just one where you shake your head and you just go, huh, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. As they say on my kid's favorite show, Dude Perfect. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. All right. Anything else, Burnsy, you want to get off your chest? Are you ready to turn the page? I mean, does House need to be like fully protected now that he sits right next to you?
Chip, I thought it was fine, more or less. I mean, Chip only sits a couple of down from me.
I only listened to what you said.
I know.
You said you were just seething in anger basically the entire night. This is football season, Burnsy. Enjoy the season. Mike Tice once said it. Enjoy the season.
I almost wanted to text you or at the fair on Friday with, what was that?
Yeah.
Because it felt like
I was
like
thinking of you. Yeah. But I think, again, that shows you, like, it's the
I
first
know.
game. Like, it's disappointing. I've been saying for
Yeah.
2 months, you're going to feel deflated if you lose this game because
Yeah.
of, first of all, every other team in the Big Ten winning. Iowa, looking good. Wisconsin having to meet, like, all that stuff. Like, and now you've got Rhode Island and you've got Nevada. Like, whatever happens those 2 weeks, like, there's no real super positive, uplifting outcomes from those next 2 games, right? It's just, you got to go and beat them, and that's it. That's all that's going to either win or you lose. There's no, oh, wow, this was awesome, or this is something, because they're teams you're supposed to beat. That's it was.
Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt it was disappointing, but it's like, I don't think you should be calling gophersports.com and turning in your tickets for the tax deduction or a refund until next season, which you can now do. Like they've got stuff they have to improve on. We just spent 55 minutes outlining all of it. Now it's up to them to figure it out and do it. And you got it. You need a game that gets the vibe back at some point.
Yeah.
That to kind of jumpstart it and reinvigorate the people that were there on Thursday.
And that's where now you go from 7 p.m. on Fox to 11 a.m. on Peacock. So it's going to be a little bit different of a vibe against Rhode Island.
Yes.
Or even next week. I think it's at 2:30 on BTN.
Yep.
It's going to be a different vibe. You can't come out flat. Now, the number one ask I think we all have is you can beat Rhode Island by running the ball 50 times. You can. But why not have Brosmer throw it 20, 25 times to work on the passing game a little bit? I also asked PJ yesterday the hypothetical that we all think about. If and when Darius Taylor is cleared here in the next week or two, which I do expect to happen unless there's a setback.
That's the other thing we didn't really talk about. Your best player was out.
Is, do you play him? Do you play him against Rhode Island or Nevada?
Yes.
And that's essentially what Flex, well, first of all, he took the answer. Well, that's out of my control. That's a trainer's call. But if he's healthy or any player's healthy, we're going to play him.
Yep.
Now, I'm not telling you Darius Taylor, if and when he's healthy here in the next 2 weeks, should get 20 carries in a game. He shouldn't. He should get 12. Get some hits on him. Get him ready for Iowa. But, I mean, there's just some things that they obviously have to work on this weekend. And then once you get done with this game, which is hopefully a 3-4 score laugher, you got the Cy-Hawk at 2:30. You got some really good night games as well. You got Kansas and Illinois on FS1. You've got Colorado, Nebraska on NBC. And Chip's favorite one, USC versus Utah State at 10 p.m. Chipper.
There you go.
10 p.m. on BTN. So as Chip's settling into that recliner with a couple of
phone charging right next to him. Yeah, a couple IPAs.
Yep.
No chance I'm up for that one.
Of the Big Ten now is you get all day football. You got 11 a.m. to now the moment you go to sleep.
Well, enjoy it, everybody. Enjoy the viewing. Enjoy the season. We are starting week 2. Week 2. This is week 2. We've done like 12 episodes in the offseason. This is week 2. We are done with week 1. Now we move on to week 2. Thanks to Burnsy. Thanks to Chip. Thanks, as always, to Jack's Cafe. Make your reservations at jaxcafe.com. Follow us at Pair and a Spare Pod on Twitter. You see it on the scroll here on the YouTube channel. Don't forget about our YouTube channel. We'd love for you to subscribe there and to the podcast as well. We're pretty much wherever you want us to be, whether it's YouTube, whether it's the pod. All of that's good. So please subscribe. Please tell a Gopher fan friend in your life that we are here. And we will talk to you next week on the Pair and a Spare podcast. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Enjoy the season.